The Black River Curse. Nobody saw Tay after he drank from the Black River. One moment, he was with his friends at the riverbank, scooping water into his hands to cool off from the heat. The next, he was gone. The other boys ran back to the village, shouting and crying. Tay's family searched the area until nightfall. The elders sent groups of men into the forest for days, but Tay was nowhere to be found. It wasn't the first time. The Black River had a long, dark history. For years, anyone who drank from it mysteriously vanished. Some people in the village believed the river was cursed, haunted by spirits who pulled people into its depths. Others thought it was just a story, told to scare children away from the dangerous waters. But after Tay disappeared, even the skeptics stayed far from the river. All except Adoma. Adoma was 16, Tay's cousin, and known in the village for being stubborn. She didn't believe in curses or spirits. To her, there was always a reason for everything, even the strange things people didn't understand. Tay didn't just vanish, she said to her mother one evening as they sat by the fire. There has to be an explanation. Her mother's face darkened. Don't speak of the river, she said. It's not our place to question it. But what if he's still out there? What if he needs help? Her mother shook her head. Tay is gone. The river takes, and it doesn't give back. Adoma couldn't accept that. Tay wasn't just her cousin, he was her best friend. He had taught her how to climb trees and catch fish. He had been there for her when she was sad, always making her laugh. She couldn't let him disappear without trying to find him. That night, while the village slept, Adoma packed a small bag with food, a knife, and a lamp. She slipped out of her family's hut and made her way toward the Black River. The air was still, and the forest was unnaturally quiet. Even the animals seemed to avoid the river. When she reached the riverbank, she hesitated. The Black River looked calm under the moonlight, its surface smooth and dark like a mirror. But there was something unsettling about it, something that made her feel like she was being washed. She knelt by the water and stared at it for a long time. If you've taken Tay, she whispered, I'm going to find him. She scooped up some water into her gourd and drank. The water was cold, and for a moment, nothing happened. Adoma started to think the stories were just that, stories. But then, her vision blurred. The world around her began to spin, and she felt herself falling, even though she was still on the ground. She tried to cry out, but her voice didn't come. Darkness swallowed her. When Adoma opened her eyes, she was lying on cold, damp ground. She wasn't at the riverbank anymore. She was in a cave. The walls shimmered like they were wet, but when she touched them, they felt alive, pulsing faintly under her fingers. She heard a faint voice calling her name. Adoma. She turned and saw Tay. He was sitting on the ground, his face pale and his clothes dirty, but he was alive. Around him were others, people she recognized from the village, people who had disappeared over the years. Tay, she ran to him and hugged him. Adoma, what are you doing here? He asked, his voice weak. I came to find you, she said. What happened? Where are we? We are in the river, Tay said. But it's not just water. It's alive. It's something else. Before Adoma could ask more, the walls of the cave began to ripple. A figure emerged, stepping out as if it had been part of the wall all along. It looked almost human, but its eyes were empty, and its skin shimmered like the surface of the river. You shouldn't have come, the figure said. Its voice was soft but echoed like it came from deep within the earth. Adoma stood her ground, gripping the knife in her hand. Let them go, she said. The figure laughed, a hollow, bone-chilling sound. They belong to the river now. And so do you. Adoma glanced at Tay and the others. They looked weak, but they were still alive. She knew she didn't have much time. Her eyes fell on the lamp she had brought. It was small, but it was bright enough to light the darkest night. She remembered stories the elders told about spirits and how they hated fire and light. She quickly lit the lamp and held it high. The cave filled with light, and the figure screamed, recoiling from the brightness. The walls began to shake, and cracks appeared, spilling water onto the ground. "Run!" Adoma shouted. Tay and the others staggered to their feet and followed her through the cave. The walls were collapsing around them, and water surged after them like a living thing, trying to pull them back. Adoma's heart pounded as she led the way through a narrow tunnel. Finally, they burst out into the open air. The sun was rising, and the forest was filled with the sound of birds. They were back. When they returned to the village, people ran out of their huts, crying and shouting with joy. Families were reunited, and the story of Adoma's bravery spread quickly. The Black River was quiet after that. No one drank from it again, and it never took anyone else. Adoma never spoke of what she saw in the cave. She didn't know if the river was truly alive or if it was something else entirely. All she knew was that she had faced it and won. But even now, when she passed by the river, she could feel it watching her, waiting.